Late night, WEEI, it's KJ, and yes, the big news, the reverberating news. Major League Baseball is going to miss games because of the current lockout. Rob Manfred announced it. You heard him mention it just here in the previous segment, and that was Tony Kornheiser on ESPN thinking that they would get a deal done. I never thought so, especially when I started digging into some of these numbers. So if you're just joining us here on Late Night, I'd mentioned that there were 12 teams. If you took the 12 lowest paying salary teams on their 26-man roster at the end of last season, 137 players across 12 teams were making the league minimum. And those 137 players make up 18% of all major league players. That's absolutely crazy. So you're already developing a lower class. Does this sound familiar? Well, get ready for what the players may be thinking is going on, and they can't say it out loud. It's a pyramid. Here's why. Those same 12 teams, you would say, okay, well, how many of those teams pay a salary that equals the Major League Baseball player's salary, which is $4.1 million? Okay, so of those 12 teams, how many of those teams are paying guys at least $4.1 million? The Orioles, one guy. The Marlins, one guy. The Pirates, nobody. The Rangers, one guy. The Angels, two guys. Now, there's a little asterisk to that because some high-priced players were on DLs, but still, when you talk about active, two guys. Cubs, three guys. Indians, two guys. Rays, two guys. Nationals, three guys. A's, seven guys. Royals, four guys. Diamondbacks, four guys. 12 teams, lowest payroll, paid active roster, 30 guys out of 780 made the league average of $4.1 million last year. So for those who say, oh, millionaires and billionaires fighting, no. And again, I saw Lou Maloney kind of go back and forth on Twitter with some people. I always say, Lou, you've got the blue check. They don't, so what? But everybody talks about how much players and athletes meet, but they never discuss how much they pay in taxes. You have an agent, you got to pay him. You got a PR team that handles some of your social media, you got to pay them. Now, keep in mind, you still have to pay those taxes first. Uncle Sam could care less who's on your team. You need to have a team, even if you're this guy who's making minimum wage in Major League Baseball. So their $500,000 is not the same as your $500,000 at your job. That's why they say some industries, they do raises in increments of 1%, 2%, and 3%. And then there are some industries that do raises in the increments of adding a zero at the end. That's baseball is one of those adding the zeros at the end. But until that happens, it's just kind of walking the line. It's all relative. Ben, I mentioned one time that people who talk about like all this money, and I said, well, look, if Michael Jordan, who's valued at like $1 billion, went and gambled $1 million at the casino, it would be the same as a guy who made $1 million betting 68.50. You have to know ratio. It shows up on Twitter. Ratio. That's the ratio. Understand the ratio. So you have a lot of players in Major League Baseball who seemingly seem to be under a form of a pyramid where, like I said, look, the Orioles have one guy that makes over $4 million. 25 of them don't. 16 of them are minimum wage. It's like, how do we push the guy off top so I can get that $4 million? But that's where it is. Now, again, I mentioned, you as the fan have loved teams for decades. It's been passed through families. What baseball is here in America is what, like, English Premier League soccer is in England, right? Like, I grew up a Chelsea fan. My dad was Chelsea. His grandfather was. My great-great-grandfather went to the first. It's the same thing with baseball. Except here with baseball, even though it's become somewhat of an international sport, it's not completely an international sport. It's still truly a Western Hemisphere sport. If anything, what's picked up over the years has been the Caribbean development. And owners will sit there and say, well, players, are you going to chip into these camps that I put up in the Dominican Republic and the winter baseball that we help probably send players to go play and stuff like that, all these other things. Look, if they see it as widgets, it's no different than other businesses. One of these owners that I mentioned earlier spent $1 billion on a mid-market size team. $1 billion. $1 billion on a team that isn't going to win it. They don't have all-stars. Maybe one, well, everybody has at least one. But they've spent $1 billion on a team that's not going to recoup that money. As you're saying, why don't they put money in the team? He's saying, yeah, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Let me write this thing off. You can't be mad at that. That's the American business structure. 617-779-7937. Text line 37937. It's KJ Late Night here on WEEI. Still to come at 10:45. We'll look at the Patriots and what's going on with the draft, what Bill may be looking at, if Bill's even looking. Someone will, hey, Bill, wake up. You know, this team might be on a roll. That's at 10:45. So to not make it seem like I'm going to just completely drown the owners here, I do have to let the players know something as well. If you're crying about 14 teams in the playoffs, then you're kind of missing the point of kind of eliminating that widget thing, right? So if there were 7 playoff teams last season, then you would be adding Oakland, Seattle in the American League, and Philly and Cincinnati in the National League. Well, some people are like, well, what's the point then? The regular season doesn't count. Well, then if you're saying that, then owners might say, would you go for 120 games? No, that's not baseball. Well, you can't say, hey, if we want to have 14 teams in the playoffs, and you say, well, what's the point? Anybody could just make it. There won't be free agent move. You know, there won't be trade deadline moves. It's like, so? He's always like, so? What is that? You know, all they're thinking is, how can they increase the revenue for television money? That's all that matters. Because that's who pays them, really. You may say, what about the guy who has the hot dog stand and everything? Man, that is really great in a Hallmark movie. But these owners are kind of like, hey, we need these major networks to be in a bidding war for our product. How do you do it? Add more teams. Because, look, if you added those 4 other teams, you get television market. 3 in Oakland, 12 in Seattle, 6 in Philadelphia, and we'll throw in Cincinnati at 33rd. So literally you have 3 teams in top 15 television markets that did not get to see baseball but could see playoff baseball. And now owners are thinking, wow, think of the local sponsorships we could sell and the different things we can get, how much more we can charge for tickets for the playoffs because there's a higher disposable income. EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That's what it's all about. That's what baseball's facing. Here's Rob Manfred saying, look, with the strike of 94, 25 years ago, the landscape of America has changed.
Rob, is the sport in a more perilous position now than it was in 94, 95 because of the number of entertainment options that are out there, how easy it is for people to turn to a Netflix or anything on their cell phone?
Yeah, the entertainment market today is different than 1994. My deepest hope is that we get an agreement quickly, we're back on the field, and we get back into that market and compete effectively.
Whoop, there it is. Well, I only said it because 25 years ago that was considered a very clever rap. There was no Eminem that showed up yet. Jay-Z hadn't hit his stride. Whoop, there it is. Was entertaining 25 years ago. Now, it came back pretty entertaining a couple years ago as a commercial, but that's because of nostalgia. But not because you were running out to go buy the product. Ooh, the similarities. See, with baseball, it's been calling itself America's what? Pastime. Pastime. You hear the stories of, hey, people have planned their trips to Florida and Arizona. They're retirees. Every year they go to spring training. And while that's great, their combined age may be 150. Husband and wife. Things evolve. The game has to evolve. Playing the shift is literally like the rule in Little League where every kid has to get in the game because they paid, to the league. My trick when I used to coach Little League was, put the really bad kid in the first 3 innings so that way he doesn't lose you the game in 6th and 7th inning. 6th and 7th inning. I wouldn't recommend that. Well, yeah, I would recommend that because it does a lot for the kid's self-esteem. Start him. If he makes an error, you can make that up over 5 innings. If he makes an error in the 6th inning because you have to put him in and you're sweating, it's already going to be stressful. It's like the universe is telling you, this is the stress. Why didn't you just be great to the kid? He'll choose not to play over time, but start him. I even told the kid's mom, don't go buy him like a real glove. Like, get him like one from like KB Toys. If you know he's really not going to ultimately play. But, hey, I'll start him. He can tell his friends at school. Adjustments need to be made. The shift is embarrassing. Anybody who sits there and says, well, you should bunt the ball. Okay, stop playing video games because you're doing what they predicted they would do. Make you stupid. Someone's throwing you a slide piece in on your hands. Yeah, you're going to lay your hands out just because the third baseman is somewhere in between center field and right. No. Field your position. There's a reason why every player on the field has assigned a number. Why does the number 5 position have to play in between 3 and 7? Just to defend against Joey Gallo. You're an infielder, but you're 30 feet into the outfield grass. Tell me how that works again. And you wonder why this past time is getting passed by while their owners are looking at their spreadsheets and say, fiscal year ends June 30th. How long can we stretch this out? Because we could take some more losses on these books and move them over. See, a lot of these owners don't just own a baseball team. Like, if we think as fans, like, oh, man, if I won the lottery, I would buy a baseball team, or I'd buy a football team if I won that much money. That would be like the only big thing you owned. These guys, it's part of a portfolio. Widgets. Ben, you know that so true story, to be totally honest here. When we were on Guest Street a couple of years ago, before the station moved, when the station moved over to where we are now, I had moved to another company by law. But Ben remembers I used to play like all this super romantic music that people just swooned over in the city. You remember those days, Ben?
I do remember those days.
You do remember those days. And what I used to tell some of the guys who were on the promotion staff, because, they were the front-facing people, I said, look, there are going to be some beautiful women who are going to come and say, I love the station. And I would tell them, don't take that as a cue to get their phone number, that they're really interested in you. They might just tell you they enjoy you. As owners with baseball, yeah, there might be a couple in there who like, I'm a diehard so-and-so fan, but no, not like you are. Not like you are. Think about this. How often have you seen an owner at a game even wearing like sports apparel of their own team? Any sport, think of it. Never. I've never seen Jerry Jones wearing a generic Cowboys jersey or Cowboys gear. He's in a suit. All of these owners, I don't care what sport, they're not even wearing the gear that you're willing to pay for. Because for them, it's just kind of basically a widget. And so some things need to be updated. Look, I grew up loving the National League because I loved the idea that you had to have more gamesmanship in the National League when your pitcher came to the plate. Do you make the move to pull the pitcher for a pinch hitter? Can this pitcher effectively put the ball in play to move a runner over? What if there's no runner on base? Do you want to give up a pinch? Do you want a pinch hit in the 5th inning when this guy's been smoking? Are you willing to give up? That's the stuff that I love about the game. But that's me in the sauce. The average person's like, dude, I heard dude could hit it like 500 feet. Let's see. Maybe the DH needs to be universal. Here's Rob Manfred on some of the changes the games probably need to face.
We also listen to our fans. The expanded playoffs would bring the excitement of meaningful September baseball and postseason baseball to fans in more markets. While we preferred the 14-team format, when the format became a significant obstacle, we listened to the players' concerns and offered a compromise by accepting the 12-team format. Finally, we offered a procedural agreement that would allow for the timely implementation of sorely needed rules like the pitch timer and the elimination of shifts to improve the entertainment value of the game on the field. And we agreed to the universal DH.
I hate the shift. I hate it. Just go back and look at some of the great base hits in the history of the game. Think about the liner back up right below Poppy's shot on Mariano Rivera, back up the middle. But what do you know? The third baseman and the shortstop are both standing right there. Game over. When you take out the drama of what's supposed to be unscripted, kind of an unscripted chaos, you're taking out the expectation of something exciting potentially happening. Still to this day, Ben, you may not, I'll give you a guess. Do you know what the most watched Game 7 in the World Series history is? Do you know which game that is?
I'm going to go Cubs, Indians.
World Series.
Yeah, wasn't that the Cubs, Indians, and was it a Game 7? Maybe it wasn't Game 7.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, Cubs, Indians, right. No. Mets, Red Sox, 1986. You know it's in. For those who remember, there was a rain delay when the game was supposed to be played on time. So listen, at a time where people were willing to wait a whole day for the excitement to come through, it still to this day is the most watched Game 7 in Major League Baseball history since they've been keeping TV stats. There was a story. There's a story. An incredible one. Things that are on people's DNA. What exists like that today? Probably the last one is, really, be honest with you, is the Sox finally winning a World Series after all that time. It's been kind of downhill in terms of the storytelling. Cubs winning a World Series, yes. But since then, like, where's the story? Where's the story? Where are the stories? They don't exist, and that's an issue. I don't care what generation you come from. There's two things you always want in your life. I don't care what technology shows up or anything. You want love, and you want to be fascinated. What's fascinating about baseball right now? Shohei Ohtani? Yeah, I'm asleep. Listen to this. The all-Major League Baseball team from last year, this is where the problem exists. And I also would say get rid of the participation trophy of everybody making an all-star team. How are you going to be an all-star when your team is losing or on its way to losing 100 games? Kill me with that, oh, well, it's representation for their town. More people are watching this guy's name get announced than have gone to the games all year. Get rid of that. If your team sucks, you don't have an all-star. But you can negotiate that into contracts, though. Hey, he's a 5-time all-star. Somebody's got to be. Salvador Perez, all Major League Baseball catcher for the Royals, not in the playoffs. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who I thought was probably a little more exciting than Shohei Ohtani, because people, I think the stat heads were like, we've never seen someone pitch and hit at the same time. It's like, we've never seen one do all of that, be the MVP, and be that many games out of the playoffs. Vladimir Guerrero was close, but he wasn't in the playoffs. Marcus Semien, same team. Two dudes on the same team, all MLB, not in the playoffs. Fernando Tatis, cover of MLB 21 The Show, not in the playoffs. Austin Riley, Braves, yes, they win the series. Juan Soto hits the ball a mile. Nah, he wasn't in the playoffs. Bryce Harper would have been if there was a 7-team per league. He would have been in. Aaron Judge played one playoff game. Shohei Ohtani, no. How are you selling the game again? They'll start by April 15th. I would mark April 15th as the day that the league turns itself back on. It's KJ, late night here on WEEI, 617-779-7937. Text lines 37937. We talk Patriots next here on WEEI.